Welcome to the show. We've got a great show today. In fact, I had a lot more fun with this project than I thought I was going to. Just to let you know, what I'm doing here is making a prototype. So at the end, don't necessarily expect a beautiful finished product, but I learned so much along the way. And really, in the end, I think we still wound up with a functional knife that has really many parts that could make their way into a finished product. Yes, this is a research knife, a development knife, a prototype knife. It's not going to be the most beautiful thing when it's done, but it is absolutely a functional knife as well. So as you can see here, I was not familiar with the process of making a friction folder. I've watched a couple of videos on it, read a little bit about it, read a little bit about the history of the folding knife that, by the way, goes back thousands of years. That was fascinating to find out. But I had never attempted one myself. And of course, I've thought about it before. I mean, probably every knife maker at some point thinks, I wonder if I should tackle a project like this. And of course, many of them do. But I'm new to the whole craft. And so for me, it felt like it was maybe too advanced to start on right away. But I don't know. This week I wound up just kind of in a different frame of mind, and I thought, I think this is the time to go ahead and just go for it. As you'll see watching this video, I actually left in a lot of the mistakes I made and a lot of the trying one thing and then second guessing it and trying another. I'm leaving a lot of that in, which is maybe uncharacteristic. Usually I'm doing videos as more of a step-by-step, do this and then do this. But in this case, I think for me, this was really more about the process of creating a prototype and the process of learning than it was about how to make at the end of the day, how to make a beautiful knife. And I think sometimes we have a tendency, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I think I have a tendency when I'm making a video to leave out some of the mistakes and leave out some of the frustrations, to take a process that may have taken 2 or 3 days and condense it down to 10 minutes. Of course, you're going to wind up leaving out a lot of the headaches and the blood and sweat that went into the process along the way. But that's kind of what this video is about. I am leaving as much footage in as I can. Of course, I've sped it up so that you don't sit there and be bored watching me do one thing for 20 minutes. But if you watch closely, you'll see, and I'll probably comment here now and then on some of the mistakes and errors that I made. For one thing, right here, if you're using a bolt like the one I'm using, right away, I knew that thing was way too long, and right away I should have cut that off to about an inch because it just would have made life so much easier when I'm using that bolt as my pivot. Now, that doesn't wind up being the pivot in the end, but along the way, as I'm seeing how things fit together, I keep on using this bolt, and every time I have to make an adjustment, I'm taking a minute and a half to screw that nut off or screw it back on. You'll see a lot of me monkeying around with that thing. And then this too, I guess if I would have drawn a really good line to begin with and known exactly what the shape was going to be, I probably could have saved a lot of time on cutting out these, both the scales or the body of the knife, and also the blade and that pivot area of the blade. I wound up having to recut that and modify it with files and kind of do all kinds of odd work along the way, but little by little, it came together. And I had a lot of fun. I mean, every part of this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn, hey, next time I won't do this. Next time I will do that. Next time I will take the time to cut off that bolt at the beginning. The learning process, I think, is really going to be on display here in this video. And honestly, I didn't even know what shape the blade of this knife was supposed to be until almost till the end of the project, because I knew that I would have to have a stop to keep the blade from swinging through. And of course, there are many ways to do that, but I decided to have an insert that essentially matched the curvature of the blade of the knife. And so I was at a fairly advanced stage of the build before I actually got that down and figured out what shape I wanted that to be. Once in a while, you'll even see me just kind of stop dead for a few seconds, and I'm thinking, and I'm at a point of indecision. Should I try this? Should I do this? For that insert piece, at first I was thinking I would actually use steel to do that. And then I started thinking about it. I thought, well, if that thing actually runs into the blade of the knife, then every time I close the knife, it's just going to be running into this piece of steel. That's no good. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll try aluminum, but the aluminum piece wasn't thick enough. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll go back to wood, but I knew that it had to be a really, really thin piece, and I didn't have a really, really thin piece of wood around that I felt was strong enough and stuff. So in the end, I went with some Kydex that was left over from another, I think, a holster build that I had done. So I used Kydex, and I thought one layer would be enough because it seemed like it matched the width of the blade. But then when I got things glued together, I had to go and put on a second layer of that in order to really get the gap that I needed. And then, of course, the gap was a little too big. And so I had to go back from there and add a little Kydex spacer. And, you'll see all of that as it happens. And that really is what this video is about. I'm trying to give a sense of the process that I go through when I'm learning a new skill or tackling a new project that maybe has challenges and aspects to it that are different from what I'm used to or from other projects that I've done before. At one point here, I thought, well, I'll just glue everything together. And maybe after I get it glued up, if stuff doesn't fit right, I'll go in there with a, I don't know, a little tool or something and try to make it work. And then I thought, well, this isn't going to be a very useful prototype if I can't actually disassemble it and see the shapes of the different parts and see how things fit together. So you'll see here that I glue the insert that's in there to prevent the blade from going through. But I didn't glue the other part of the handle on because I wanted to make sure that I could take that off, put it back on to see how those parts fit together in case I decide to use this prototype as sort of a template for another knife. Although I will say I will obviously have to scale it down. So here I am cutting out that other piece to sort of stack on the first insert there. And this definitely does give me, it gives me plenty of space, but it actually gives me a little too much. So you'll see here that after I get things put together, I do have to go back and make a little kind of washer or a spacer in there. One of the fun things about building a prototype that it's not something you're planning to, take to market at the end of the day. One of the nice things about that is you're free to do things that you would never do on a project that you're really like putting your pride into. You'll see here I use a bunch of different ways of kind of fastening this together. I use obviously the glue you saw and some pre-drilled and put a screw through there. Another spot I have this little brad nail that I pounded in to hold something in place while I put the rest of it together. And I'm just experimenting with the different ideas and seeing what works and what doesn't, and not worrying too much about how beautiful the finished product is going to be. You'll see a lot of shots of me doing something and then kind of doing it again, or maybe even starting over and trying something a different way. But for me, that's really what the process looks like when it comes to developing a new skill. They say you're not supposed to reinvent the wheel, but in some ways it seems like I do that on every new skill that I learn. I can watch as many videos on it, read as many blog posts as I want, and still it seems like in my mind, I'm like, oh, I've got a better way I can do this. And so then I start to do it that way. And then I find out the hard way, oh, there's a reason why the guys do it the way they do it, But for me, I guess that's part of the fun, really, of being a maker or a creator, an inventor, Either that or I'm just bullheaded. So now we come to the part that it was most critical that this part work, because the one thing I've always been fascinated by ever since whatever it was 6 months ago when I made my first set of tongs, I'm just blown away by the fact that you can just cut off a piece of metal rod, put it through holes that you've drilled in 2 pieces of metal or a piece of wooden metal, and then peen the ends, and suddenly you have this functional pivot. I don't know, it just seems too simple to work that well. So that was one of the key things I wanted to do on this particular model, was to test that and see if that's really all you need to do to make a friction folder work. And I think you'll see in the end that it actually comes out really well. And of course, the way a lot of friction folder designs work, at least this style, you have this sort of flipper. And when the knife is closed, it's just sticking up there and it's not really doing anything. It's made of steel, so might as well throw a bottle opener on there. Now, of course, this isn't a knife that I plan to throw in my pocket and take with camping or anything, but it's a knife. Might as well put an edge on it. So I took it over to the 1x30 and sharpened it up. I should point out, you may have already noticed, I did not temper this blade. I didn't heat treat this blade. This is totally mystery steel. I haven't tried to heat treat it before. This is mostly the type of project I would use it for. I'm not really planning to make finished knife blades out of this. But as you can see, it at least holds an edge well enough to cut through some paper. I cut a little cardboard with it before, and again, it's not the knife that you're going to bring with you on camping trips. It's obviously just kind of a big, ugly thing. But I had a lot of fun making it, and I can't even begin to tell you how much I learned on this project. So there it is. It turned out, I think, better than I was expecting it to. It's definitely not prettier than I was expecting it to be, but that wasn't really the point of this knife. And I can actually use some of what I learned on this on a future project, and hopefully one that will have a little bit better fit and finish at the end. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for joining me, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We're here 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times in a week, and I'd love to get your feedback on my videos. So thanks again. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Yeah, no, I was just wondering when you were coming home, because the kids are, yeah. Okay, we'll talk to you in a bit. Love you, dear. Okay, bye-bye.